The phone vibrated once on the kitchen counter, sharp and impatient, like it already knew it was about to change my life. I was rinsing rice in a steel bowl, the water cloudy between my fingers, when I glanced at the screen. One message. From my son. 11 words. And by the time I finished reading them, the woman I had been for 58 years quietly collapsed inside me. You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only family. I stared at the words until they blurred, until the kitchen smelled less like warm spices and more like cold metal. Only family. As if I had not carried him in my body for 9 months. As if my bones had not bent and reshaped to make room for his life. As if the sacrifices I made, silent, endless, unpaid, had been erased by a single tap of a thumb. I reread the message again and again, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping there was another message coming. Joke. An explanation. Something. There was nothing. The rice overflowed in the sink. Water spilled onto the floor. I didn't move. This dinner wasn't just any dinner. It was the anniversary dinner. 5 years of marriage. The dinner I had paid for. The restaurant booking under my name. The dress I bought my daughter-in-law when she said she had nothing suitable. The gift envelope already resting in my purse. Money I'd saved by skipping my blood pressure medication some months, by turning off the heater at night, by pretending I didn't need anything. I lowered myself into the chair by the window. Outside, the afternoon sun leaned against the walls like it was tired too. My name is Aaliya Rehman. I raised my son alone after his father died in a factory accident when my boy was 6. I cleaned houses during the day and stitched clothes at night. I learned to stretch lentils, to smile when my back screamed, to hide hunger behind discipline. I did everything mothers are praised for, and everything they are forgotten for. When my son Samir got into university, I sold my wedding bangles. When he wanted to marry Naila, I paid half the wedding expenses because her family said they were struggling. When Samir lost his job during the pandemic, I emptied my small savings to cover their rent. And now only family. My phone vibrated again. My heart jumped. But it wasn't him. It was the bank. Payment successful. Restaurant Lumiere, Picard 120,000. I laughed. A short, broken sound escaped my throat. So the payment went through. The dinner was confirmed. Just not for me. I typed slowly, carefully, my fingers trembling like they were afraid of being punished. Samir, did I do something wrong? The message showed seen almost immediately. No reply. That silence was louder than any insult. I looked around my small apartment. The peeling paint, the couch with one broken leg, the framed photo of Samir at graduation where I stood just outside the frame because there wasn't enough space. I had built my entire life around being useful, necessary, invisible but needed. And suddenly I was neither. As the afternoon faded into evening, something unfamiliar began to stir beneath the hurt. Not anger. Not yet. Something sharper. Something awake. I remembered a conversation from months ago, when I overheard Naila telling her friend on the phone, "Once Samir gets his promotion, we won't need her money anymore. She's too emotional anyway." I had laughed it off then. Mothers always do. But now, alone in my quiet kitchen, I finally allowed myself to feel it. The truth had been sitting in front of me for years. I wasn't family. I was a resource. The doorbell rang suddenly. Flinched. When I opened the door, the delivery boy handed me a small envelope. Inside was the restaurant confirmation receipt. My name printed neatly at the top. The irony burned my eyes. I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. That was the moment I made a decision. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't cry in front of them. And I wouldn't cancel the dinner either. If they wanted to show me I wasn't family, I would show them exactly what that meant. Picked up my phone again. This time I didn't text my son. Called the restaurant. And as the line connected, I smiled for the first time that day. A quiet, dangerous smile that even surprised me. The restaurant manager's voice was polite, professional, and utterly unaware that he was speaking to a woman standing at the edge of a personal war. "Yes, Mrs. Rehman," he said. Your reservation for tonight is confirmed. Private dining. Special menu. Is there anything you'd like to add? I paused, my fingers tight around the phone. Yes, I said calmly. I'd like to change something. There was a rustle on the other end. Of course. I swallowed. This wasn't revenge fueled by shouting or drama. This was something colder. Something earned. I'd like the bill to be split, I continued. Half charged to the card ending in 4421. The rest, to be settled by the guests themselves. A brief silence. I'm sorry, ma'am. The full payment has already. I know, I said softly. I'm asking for a partial refund. I am not attending. Another pause. Then. Understood. We'll adjust it. When the call ended, my hands shook. Not from fear but from release. For the first time in years, I had chosen myself without asking permission. I spent the next hour sitting very still, listening to the city outside my window. Horns. Children shouting. Life moving forward without noticing me. And I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. I had no role left to play. So I decided to write a new one. At 7:45 p.m., as Samir and Naila were likely arriving at the restaurant, dressed beautifully, confident, unburdened, I walked into my bedroom and opened an old steel trunk. Inside were documents I hadn't touched in years. Property papers. Receipts. Loan agreements. The truth. Years ago, when Samir started his first business, he couldn't qualify for a loan. My name was clean. My credit untouched. I'd signed everything. The shop. The inventory. Lease. Legally it was mine. When he married, I transferred management but never ownership. Not because I was clever. Because something in me was afraid of disappearing completely. That fear had saved me. At exactly 8:12 p.m. my phone rang. Amy, Samir said, his voice tight. There's a problem. I said nothing. The restaurant says half the payment is pending. I imagined them sitting at the table. The candles lit. The waiter standing politely, waiting for a card. I'm not attending, I replied. Family dinners don't include outsiders. Silence. Then Naila's voice, sharp and irritated, cut in. This is embarrassing. Why would you do this? Closed my eyes. For a moment the old guilt tried to rise. The old habit of apologizing. Of fixing things. But I pushed it down. Because, I said evenly, I am no longer paying for things I'm not welcome at. Samir exhaled loudly. Amy, you're overreacting. That word. Overreacting. The universal weapon used against women who finally speak. I paid for your education, I said quietly. Your wedding. Your rent. Your business. Tonight's dinner. And I accepted being excluded. I am not overreacting. I am responding. Naila scoffed. We didn't ask you to. You did. I interrupted, my voice suddenly steel. Every time you stayed silent while I paid. Every time you accepted without gratitude. Silence is also a request. The line went dead. My heart pounded, but I felt strangely light. The next morning I went to the lawyer. The young man across the desk adjusted his glasses as he reviewed the documents. Mrs. Rehman, he said slowly, you are the sole legal owner of the business property. Yes, I said. I'd like to restructure. That afternoon I sent Samir an email. Not a message. An email. Formal, cold, undeniable. Effective immediately. All profits from the business will be managed under my account until further notice. This is not punishment. This is clarity. He replied within minutes. You're ruining our marriage. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed. Well, I'm saving myself. The days that followed were brutal. Accusations. Tears. Extended family calling to say I was heartless. That I was destroying my son. But something had shifted. I started sleeping through the night. I started eating full meals. I started looking at my reflection without shame. One evening I found an old notebook. My stitching designs from years ago. Patterns I never had time to sell. Ideas I had buried under responsibility. I traced one with my finger. For the first time in decades, I wondered, who am I if I am not needed? The answer scared me, but it also excited me. And just as I began to feel steady, my phone buzzed with a message that made my stomach drop. "Emmy, we need to talk. It's urgent." We met at a small cafe near the courthouse, neutral ground. Samir looked older than I remembered. Tired. His confidence frayed at the edges. Nyla sat beside him, arms crossed, eyes distant. I noticed something immediately. They didn't look united. "Amy," Samir began, rubbing his temples. "There's something you should know." Waited. Nyla sighed sharply, then spoke without looking at me. "The business is in trouble." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" Samir swallowed. "There are debts. Loans we didn't tell you about." The air felt suddenly thin. "How much?" I asked. They exchanged a glance. "Enough," Samir said quietly, "that if you take full control, we might lose everything." There it was. Not an apology. Not regret. Fear. I leaned back in my chair, my heart steady. "You already lost something," I said. "You lost me." Nyla finally looked at me then. Her voice was softer. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I studied her face. A young woman taught to secure her future by pushing others aside. I saw myself in her once, before life taught me better. "Hurt isn't the same as erased," I replied. Samir's voice cracked. "What do you want?" The old Aaliya would have said, respect, love, inclusion. This Aaliya knew better. "I want peace," I said. "And honesty. If we move forward, it will be on new terms." I laid out the conditions. Transparency in finances. Shared responsibility. And one thing more important than all the rest. I will not be treated as optional. They agreed. But I already knew the truth. This wasn't about fixing them. It was about freeing myself. In the weeks that followed, I hired an accountant. I stabilized the business. I hired staff so I didn't have to manage daily operations. And with the money that finally felt like mine, I did something no one expected. I rented a small studio space. I returned to my stitching. First it was just for myself. Then orders came in. Then collaborations. Then my designs were featured in a local exhibition. People called me talented, visionary. Words I had never been given as a mother, only as a resource. One afternoon, Samir visited my studio. He stood quietly watching me work. "You're different," he said. I smiled without looking up. "So are you. Do you forgive us?" he asked. I paused, needle suspended in the air. "I forgive," I said. "But I don't forget who I am anymore." That night, alone in my apartment, I set the table for one, lit a candle, cooked my favorite meal. And as I sat down, I realized something profound. Family is not who invites you to dinner. Family is who doesn't make you earn a seat. I raised my glass. To survival, to clarity, to the woman I became after being excluded. And for the first time in my life, felt full.